And let me now introduce the next guest, who is Irene Khan, who was 9 years as the leader of Amnesty International. As such, she was not only the first woman to take that post, but also the first Asian, the first Muslim, to lead the world's biggest human rights organization. So it really is a privilege to give the floor to Irene Khan.
So let me begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me, giving me this opportunity to talk to you today. Now, I'm not going to ask you to overthrow any government. I'm going to talk to you about Ashraf, and I hope bring a human and a human rights side to the problem of Camp Ashraf. A thorn in the side of the Iranian government, a pawn in the political bargaining between Tehran and Baghdad, a symbol of Iranian resistance. Those are three different ways in which Camp Ashraf and its residents have been described by commentators. Now, I'm not a chess player, actually, nor am I a politician, so I leave it to others, more qualified than myself, to say what kind of a chess game is unfolding in that region. My message is simple. People, women, men, should not be used as political pawns. My purpose today in talking to you is to lay out the humanitarian scene and the human suffering in Camp Ashraf and see what the international community should do to stop it. Now, I haven't been to Camp Ashraf. I know some of you have. I also know that some of you have family and friends there. So you know better than me what we are talking about. We are talking about 3,400 or so human beings living behind barbed wire in a dusty landscape. Some of them have lived there for almost a quarter of a century because of what they believe in, because of their struggle for freedom. A very large number of them are women. Life has not been easy for them, but never have they been so endangered, isolated, harassed, targeted, and attacked as they are now. Well, as we all know, from 2003, when the coalition forces intervened in Iraq, until the 1st of January 2009, the residents of Camp Ashraf were designated by the US as protected persons under the Geneva Convention. In January 2009, under the agreement signed between the US and the government of Iraq, the US handed over the security of the country to the Iraqi authorities, and along with it, also the control of Camp Ashraf. But the status of the residents in the camp was left unclear. The Iraqi government has sent mixed signals about Camp Ashraf. In diplomatic circles, it says it will respect its undertaking not to deport the residents of Ashraf and to treat them humanely. But in reality, on the ground, it has sought to create an untenable situation for the camp residents. It has created a committee for the suppression of Ashraf in the Prime Minister's office. And some senior Iraqi officials have made no bones about their intent to close down Ashraf and to move the people elsewhere. Camp Ashraf is under siege, isolated from normal contact. Now, from a human rights and a humanitarian perspective, let me highlight three major concerns. First, the physical attacks on the residents. You know what happened in July 2009 when there was a two-day attack launched on the camp, which left 11 people dead, 36 persons detained, beaten, and tortured. According to reports, armed security forces used bulldozers to force their way into the camp. in broad daylight. They used water cannons, batons, tear gas against unarmed residents on the other side. And to this day, there has been no independent investigation of the incident, no accountability for the deaths. Now, history and experience shows that impunity breeds more human rights violations. And that is precisely what has happened here too. The camp is under constant pressure. Threats and attacks have continued. The most recent one was only earlier this month, on the 7th of January, in which 176 people were injured, including over 91 or so women. Now, where is that story on the human rights agenda? Where is the call for accountability? The second is concerns about the medical condition. Now, a recent Amnesty International report has set out the difficulties that people face today when they seek medical care because the camp is surrounded by Iraqi security forces. An Iraqi security committee, which is responsible for all matters of the camp, decides about medical treatment. The committee members decide who can travel outside the camp and who will go with them for the treatment. They control the influx of supplies into the camp. And for certain serious illnesses, people have to seek medical treatment outside, either in hospitals in Baghdad or elsewhere. And many patients cannot attend their appointments because they're not allowed to take anyone with them. They're not allowed even to take an interpreter with them. The Iraqi government doesn't provide wheelchairs or special beds, which patients sometimes need. And so an already bad medical situation has become worse, leaving many life-threatening and chronic cases without treatment. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, you have those megaphones that we've heard about, loud chants and slogans from 120 loudspeakers, going on for about 11 months. Imagine, if you have it for an hour, what you feel, and here are people being bombarded with, I would say, noise torture. So it's not just physically, but also auditorially that the camp is under siege. Now, psychological pressure is no better, is no less distressing than physical ill treatment. And yet again, that is an issue that doesn't make it to the news. As Governor Richardson said, there is a lot that we do not know about Ashraf. Perhaps there is a lot that we do not want to know about Ashraf, because it may make us come face to face with our own judgments and decisions, some tough decisions. Now, the third concern is the risk of forced eviction or even expulsion, and a risk that continues to grow as the Maliki government reaches out to the Iranian regime. Now, in case there is any doubt in anyone's mind as to what might happen if people from Ashraf camp were to be returned forcibly to Iran, the regime in Tehran sent us a brutal message only yesterday by executing Jafar Kazmi and Muhammad Ali Hajagai. Now, what was their crime? Chanting slogans supporting PMOI, photographing post-election protests, distributing them on the internet. And yes, one of them had a son in Ashraf. In late December, Ali Saremi, as you know, was hanged without notice. He had visited his son in Ashraf. He was accused of membership of PMI. 4 others, including a woman, are on death row for the same reason. All their trials were unfair. Organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have acknowledged that, and have also acknowledged reports of ill torture and ill treatment.